Good morning, honorable members and those under the sound of my voice. In our Moments of Impact devotional segment, I want to exhort you today from the topic, Love Your Neighbor as You Love Yourself. The Gospel of St. Luke records a story where a certain lawyer stood up and tempted Jesus, saying, Master, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? Jesus said unto him, What is written in the law? How readest thou? He answering said, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. And Jesus said unto him, Thou hast answered right. This do, and thou shalt live. But he, willing to justify himself, said unto Jesus, Who is my neighbor? Jesus answering said, A certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and fell among the thieves, which stripped him of his raiment, and wounded him, and departed him, leaving him half dead. And by chance there came down a certain priest that way, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. And likewise a Levite, when he was at the place, he came and looked on him, and passed by on the other side. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion on him. He went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring in oil and wine, and set him on his own beast, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. And on the morrow he departed. He took out 2 pence, and gave them to the host, and said unto him, Take care of him. Whatsoever thou spendest more, when I come again, I will repay thee. Which now of these 3 thinkest thou was a neighbor unto him that fell among the thieves? And he said, He that showed mercy on him. Then said Jesus unto him, And do thou likewise. The moral of this lesson is loving your neighbor as loving yourself requires you to go above and beyond the call of duty to assist those that are in need. In conclusion, I want to encourage each of you under the sound of my voice to not be like the priest or the Levite who saw the need of the wounded and decided not to help. Instead, let us be like the Good Samaritan who saw the need of the wounded man, extended mercy, and rendered assistance without looking for anything in return. If we see a need, let's meet the need. Let's not just love in word, but in deed. The Bahamas would be such a better place if everyone would love their neighbor as they love themselves. Today, let's start a love your neighbor as yourself revolution and bring back compassion, bring back peace, bring back tranquility that is so desperately needed in our nation. Let's truly make the Bahamas the greatest little country on this side of heaven. Selah. Think on these things. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gift of life, health, and strength. We hallow and we exalt your name. We praise you today for your marvelous works. We thank you for your goodness and your kindness that you freely extend toward us on a daily basis, even when we don't deserve it. Father, we ask that you would help us to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. Father, forgive us as a people for our selfish and self-centered behavior. Help us, O Lord, as a nation and a people to not be like the priests, the Levite, who overlook those who are hurting right before our eyes. We pray today, Lord, that like the Good Samaritan, we would extend compassion and mercy and go the extra mile to help our brother or sister in need. Now, Father, today, as these honorable members meet to discuss the people's business, we humbly ask for your wisdom and your direction. We pray, Lord, that you would superintend the affairs of today's proceedings. We ask your Holy Spirit to fill this place with your power, with your presence, and with your peace. Oh, Lord, we pray a covering over our leaders today. We ask, Lord, for your guidance. We ask for your protection over them. We ask, Almighty God, that you would keep them safe from all harm and danger, sickness and disease. We commit our leaders into your hands and under your loving care. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Let us repeat the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Darble, Clay Sweeting, Keith Bell, Dwayne Monroe, Vaughn Miller, Jobeth Colby Davis, Ginger Moxie, Mario Boleg, Jomo Campbell, Basil McIntosh, Miles LaRoda, Pia Glover Roll, Lisa Ramming, Zane Lightborn, Dr. Hubert Minnis, Jamal Strawn, John Pinder, Marcus Roll, Leon Lundy, Kirk Cornish, Wade Watson, Leonardo Lightborn, Leslie Miller Bryce, Leroy Major, Sylvanius Petty, Mikel Bonnaby, Michael Pintard, James Kwesi Thompson, Aram Lewis, Shannon Dawn Cartwright, Adrian Gibson, Adrian White.
Thank you. Good morning, honorable members. Before we get into the people's business, I would like to extend sincerest condolences on behalf of myself and the staff of the House of Assembly and the Parliament to our dear brother, the honorable member for Garden Hills, who would have lost his brother this morning. So if you have an opportunity to reach out, please, let's rally around him and his family today. Now let's get on with the people's business. Introduction and swearing of new members. Laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Exumas and Ragged Island.
Madam President, Madam Speaker, I wouldn't want to be in that other place just yet. Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Public Procurement Act 2023, appointed day notice 2023.
Thank you, honorable member. Order the document be brought up. Order the document to lie on the table. For the laying of documents, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Centerville.
Yes, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: IRCA Annual Report and 2022 Annual Plan, along with the IRCA Annual Report and 2023 Annual Plan.
Thank you, honorable member. Order the documents be brought up. Order the documents to lie on the table. For the laying of documents, thank you, honorable member. Statement and communication by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for West From Bahama and Bimini.
Madam Speaker, the rich history of the Bahamas is written with chapters of stories of the resilient and determined Bahamian woman. The Bahamian woman bequeathed with an overflow of vitality the phenomenal Bahamian woman who has fought her way through to accomplishment and acclaim in her 50-year-old Bahamas. Madam Speaker, the triumphs are many, and we should celebrate. In 1962, when women voted for the first time, 40 years ago when Janet Bostwick became the first woman to sit in this honorable House of Assembly. In January of 2002, when Dame Ivy DeMont became the first woman to serve as Governor General. In 1996, when Dame Joan Sawyer became the first woman to serve as Chief Justice. And Madam Speaker, in 1977, when Marjorie Davis became the first woman ever to become the Director of Education. And Madam Speaker, a piece of history many forget, that in 1991, when Sir Lyndon equated Mary Ann Hicks to hero status in track and field. Madam Speaker, there is much to celebrate, and we must praise and celebrate the women of our country. We are summoned to celebrate with the sounds of the trumpets in this our Golden Jubilee. But, Madam Speaker, we must be equally mindful of the fact that the Bahamas is an evolving nation with attending issues that we must identify, accept, and find appropriate resolution. Today, Madam Speaker, we are beset with a violent subculture. A subculture has invaded our Bahamas, our beloved Bahamas, that boasts of the quiet revolution and being the home of hospitality and of Christian values. Whilst our nation and all of our people must commit to returning to them good old days, we must accept that the social cancer is now at our doorsteps. Madam Speaker, legislative, community, and communicative action with definitive goals and objectives must be the overarching strategy to reverse and to bring an end to this horrific period in our history. Madam Speaker, I am pleased that on this day, the Davis administration will lay on the table of the House of Assembly the Protection Against Violence Bill 2023. Madam Speaker, the Bahamas has taken very deliberate incremental steps to end gender-based violence through strengthened and responsive state and civil action. In July 2012, the Bahamas participated in the United Nations Entity for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women, strengthening state accountability and community action for ending violence against women project. In July 2013, the Bahamas launched a national task force to oversee the development, implementation, and coordination of a national strategic plan to address gender-based violence. In August 2015, a strategic plan to address gender-based violence was prepared by the National Task Force for Gender-Based Violence. The plan was jointly delivered by Chairperson, the Honorable Ruby M. Nottage, Justice Retired, and Deputy Chairpersons, Dr. Sandra Dean Patterson and Dr. Robin Roberts. Gender-based issues give rise to concerns in our society. Due to the high incidence of crime generally in the Bahamas involving violence, whether it be violence against men, women, children, or gang violence, it was also felt that the bill should not discriminate against anyone. The Protection Against Violence Bill 2023, therefore, generally provides for the protection of and support for victims of violence. Part 2 of the bill, Madam Speaker, seeks to set out the responsibility of the Commission to ensure international and regional obligations of the country. We are to ensure that they are complied with and enumerates the binding principles regarding human rights, and the Commission is required to adhere to it. Part 3 of the bill seeks to provide the framework for the administration of the Act. Specifically, the Minister has responsibility for A, develop and implement a national strategic plan, B, strengthen institution capacity in response to violence, 3, establish a foundation to raise funds for the sole use and benefit of the Commission in its functions, and D, implement sensitivity training programs for members of the police force and support service personnel, and generally raise awareness of the public on problems and remedies of violence. Clauses 10 to 14 of the bill will establish the Protection Against Violence Commission as a body corporate and its subsidiary technical department known as the Protection Against Violence Secretariat. Under the bill, the overarching functions of the Commission include strengthening involvement of multi-sectoral stakeholders in private-public partnerships to combat and respond to violence with effective strategies and policies, and to provide care and support services through shelters, counseling and care, and custody of affected children to victims of violence. Under Clause 12 of the bill, the Commission is empowered to, inter alia, A, grant funding for approved and certified community programs or projects of support service providers, and B, provide technical assistance in programs and project management and information systems to support service providers, and 3, or C, consult, coordinate, and cooperate with other regional and international violence-based organizations and institutions. And D, Madam Speaker, engage one or more private public health facilities to conduct medical examinations on victims of sexual and physical abuse and to provide necessary treatment. Part 4 of the bill establishes and expressly prescribes the general rights of victims of violence, which include A, the right to be treated with compassion and dignity by all persons who come into contact with that victim in their capacity as care and support professionals. B, the right to be informed of all rights and services available to them under Part 4 of the bill. C, the right to confidentiality by any person acting in their capacity to provide care or support. And D, the right to privacy. Part 5 of the bill, Madam Speaker, seeks to set out the procedure for the making and handling of complaints by victims and the various requirements of an investigating officer, which include assisting the victim with obtaining medical treatment or getting to a safe place, accompanying the victim to collect their belongings from the perpetrator's residence, providing the victim with contact information for the Commission for further assistance. Part 6 of the bill demonstrates the government's commitment to protect women as the predominant victims of sexual and physical abuse and outlines the care and support services available to such victims, namely A, safe housing or shelter for victims and accompanying children, B, psychological, medical, and legal assistance, C, access to spaces and community, and D, readjustment and training programs. Part 7 of the bill establishes a protocol to be followed when violence results in death, Madam Speaker. A fatality review team is empowered inter alia to review closed cases. Madam Speaker. The work of the team will enable the Commission to accurately report on the rate of femicide in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Madam Speaker, allow me to thank the Attorney General and his office for their unending work to get to this piece of legislation and all other pieces of legislation we brought to this Honorable House of Assembly. We are grateful and applaud their unfettered approach and efforts to complete their work. Madam Speaker, we are asking the public for its feedback ahead of debate on this protection bill. We intend to debate this bill in early July. Just after the debate on the 2023-2024 budget, my colleagues and I will travel the country to discuss with the people during town hall meetings and the substance of the bill and hear and ascertain their views. Madam Speaker, this is just another step, but an important step. We must do all we can collectively to reverse the negative trends of our society and bring an end to violence. Madam Speaker, it is a collective responsibility. We must begin by taking a look into the mirror. And, Madam Speaker, we must remind ourselves of the journey we took to majority rule and to independence. Remember, our forefathers achieved majority rule through a quiet revolution, underscored by peace and love. Madam Speaker, I end with the words of our chaplain: we must learn to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Order that the document be brought up. Order the document to lie on the table. Further communications? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Thank you much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, one of the most important goals for my administration is to ensure the appropriateness, fairness, and adequacy of the Bahamas' tax regime. This requires deliberate consideration and evaluation of the existing tax landscape, responding to challenges that may arise in the international space, and assessment of policy options and their fiscal impacts, and having in place a transparent and inclusive framework for engagement with a wide cross-section of stakeholders. Which will leave, Madam Speaker, I just rise to say a few words about the recently released Green Paper on Corporate Income Tax Strategies for the Bahamas, an exercise that embodies these key determinants that make for a successful public policy decision-making process. And I repeat, public policy decision-making process. Madam Speaker, as well documented in the Green Paper, there are two factors that drive this initiative on corporate income tax. One of which is the government's need to address the G7 initiative to tax the profits of multinationals with annual revenues in excess of euro 750 million, earned in every jurisdiction in which they do business. The Bahamas became a signatory to the OECD's Pillar 2 framework on July 1st, 2021. And together with some 350 countries, agreed to the implementation of a 15% minimum corporate income tax for the in-scope entities. I just repeat, Madam Speaker. The Bahamas became a signatory to the OECD's Pillar 2 framework on July 1st, 2021. The Bahamas is not obligated to impose 15% corporate income tax. However, these entities in the Bahamas meeting the threshold of 750 million euros annually will be liable to pay a top-up tax in their various jurisdictions where their head offices are, where they are not paying this income tax. So, Madam Speaker, this is an incentive for the Bahamas to impose the 15% minimum corporate income tax. What I mean by that, Madam Speaker, is that if we don't impose it on the multinationals, wherever they're headquartered, that jurisdiction will top up whatever their taxes are to make up for the 15% that we would not get. And so instead of it going to that jurisdiction, it is incentive that, well, they pay 15% in our jurisdiction. So that is the basis, one of the pillars in which motivates the discussion that we are having on that and informs the Green Paper. The second motivation for exploring a corporate income tax is to address the government's goal of securing greater fairness and equity within the Bahamas' existing tax regime. Of significance here is the prevailing concern about the inherent bias in the business license fees, where firms still incur a significant tax burden even in loss-making years, because calculations are based on turnover instead of profits. I want to emphasize here that if it is decided that a corporate income tax is to be levied on companies doing business in the Bahamas, those companies paying a corporate income tax will not also pay business license fees. And I repeat that. If it is decided that a corporate income tax is to be levied, right, those companies upon which it is levied will not have to pay business license fees. Madam Speaker, the government aims to address these challenges in a manner that promotes fiscal resilience, economic growth, and development. The Green Paper is the result of a comprehensive exercise undertaken by the government with the assistance of the consultancy firm of Deloitte. It was also ably supported by a business advisory committee comprised of economic sector representatives and employed an assessment process that included interviews with key business leaders on potential options, risks, and challenges. And so, I repeat, the Green Paper was crafted with the support of a business advisory committee that comprised representatives from our economic sector, and that committee employed an assessment process that included interviews with key business leaders on potential options, risks, and challenges. Madam Speaker, the government's understanding of the importance of public input for such a watershed public policy proposal underpins the preparation of the Green Paper on corporate income tax strategies for the Bahamas. And here, I believe it is important to make a distinction between a Green Paper and a White Paper. Green is green, white is white. As is typical of Green Papers, the Green Paper on corporate income tax strategy is intended to stimulate discussion and solicit feedback from the public on what is a potentially far-reaching public policy issue under consideration by the government. That's what the Green Paper is about. It is intended to stimulate discussion and to get feedback from the public on what is a potentially far-reaching public policy issue that the government is considering. By design, it signals possible approaches and courses of action that the government may take in progressing towards the development of policy and legislation regarding the issue under consideration. While the Green Paper presents options on what a corporate income tax policy for the Bahamas might look like, it does not contain a commitment to any particular policy action. This, Madam Speaker, is to be arrived at after the period of consultation, after we engage in discussion with stakeholders and the public, receive their comments, and then feed this input into the next stage of the process, which is the crafting of the white paper. The white paper, which is to follow the green paper, will contain explicit policy statements on the government's intended approach to the corporate income tax strategy and its implementation, and will set out proposals for legislative changes and the introduction of new laws as deemed necessary. Madam Speaker, the government is committed to pursuing this initiative with complete transparency, inclusive consultation and engagement with stakeholders, and with due consideration to a comprehensive assessment of the fiscal and economic impacts. This initiative will not be complete without the involvement of public feedback on the options identified in the green paper and responses to the specific questions outlined in the document. Stakeholder feedback is key to the government crafting the optimal design for the corporate income tax strategy. The green paper was released on May 15, 2023. And I wish to announce today, Madam Speaker, that we have extended the period of consultation until the 31st of August, 2023. Madam Speaker, that is my communication on this issue of the green paper, and trust it will allay concerns and put in perspective what a green paper is all about.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Order that the document be brought up. Order the document to lie on the table. Further communications? You may continue, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, today, at the appropriate part of our agenda, I would rise to table the Consumer Protection Bill of 2023. A significant piece of legislation designed to enhance the rights of consumers across our country. This bill is for all Bahamians, from the young mother budgeting for her family's groceries to the retiree investing his hard-earned money in a new home appliance. Our individual households, our communities, and our economy depend on the integrity and fairness of trade. Over the years, the Consumer Protection Act that's present has served as a firm foundation in ensuring fairness in our markets. However, in an era of digital transactions, global markets, and rapidly evolving consumer needs and products, it's time for us to strengthen our laws, to adapt, and to better protect the interests of Bahamian consumers. Madam Speaker, today we propose important amendments to our existing consumer protection laws. These amendments directly correspond with our blueprint for change and our economic plan, and reflect our belief that consumer protections are critical to economic development, poverty reduction, and social well-being. Our economic growth depends upon a market which encourages healthy competition, drives innovation, and ensures customer satisfaction. At the heart of this new consumer protection bill is a commitment to restructuring and reorganizing existing provisions for better clarity and comprehension. The bill aims to expand definitions, refine the functions of the Consumer Commission, and modernize the ways in which the Commission operates. These changes are driven by a commitment to transparency and by aligning our policies with best international practices. Our focus on transparency supports a market environment in which all players, big and small, can operate, grow, and prosper in a manner that is regulated and fair. We are also enhancing the ways consumers can lodge complaints. Under the new bill, consumers can make complaints even while outside the Bahamas. And we are expanding the list of who can make a complaint on behalf of the complainant. These changes reflect our commitment to inclusivity and accessibility, ensuring that all Bahamians have a voice and can seek redress when necessary. In a world that is increasingly digital, we recognize the need to streamline processes and make it easier for consumers to give evidence. To this end, the bill includes provisions to allow for virtual testimony, which will expedite investigations and support convenience for consumers. The proposed legislation also empowers the Consumer Commission to issue advisory notices in situations where harmful practices to consumers are identified. We believe these notices will serve as a valuable tool in preventing harmful business practices and educating consumers about potential risks. Madam Speaker, a significant change under the new bill is the mandatory licensing and registration of providers. Failure to comply will result in penalties, encouraging businesses to operate within the boundaries of law and promoting a culture of accountability. The bill includes stringent provisions against misleading and deceptive conduct, harassment, and coercion. We want to create a marketplace where consumers can engage with confidence and without fear. A critical aspect of the bill is the restriction of pyramid selling and the obligation for businesses to state the full cost of goods or services. These measures will help ensure that consumers are not exploited or deceived. Madam Speaker, the bill seeks to repeal sections that no longer serve our purpose, including those on approved and non-approved services and businesses offering repair services. Updating our laws to respond to changed conditions allows us to ensure the people are served effectively. As we continue to usher the Bahamas into the digital age, this bill also enhances our ability to oversee distance selling and payment arrangements. With the growth of online commerce, it's vital that we maintain robust checks and balances, ensuring that every transaction is fair and transparent. Additionally, the bill expands on the powers of the minister to make necessary regulations to protect consumers effectively. This is crucial as it provides us with the flexibility to adapt and respond swiftly to emerging challenges and opportunities in the marketplace. The enactment of this bill signals a significant shift in our approach to consumer protection. We are aiming for an inclusive economy where everyone has access to safe, quality goods and services at a fair price. The bill goes beyond enhancing the rights of consumers. It is about improving the lives of Bahamians. It's about ensuring that when a young Bahamian entrepreneur sets up his first business, he does so in a marketplace that values fairness and transparency. It is about ensuring that when a Bahamian family invests in a new home, they do so with the confidence that their rights as consumers will be respected and protected. It's about creating an environment where businesses thrive on the principles of fair competition and customer satisfaction. Consumer protection isn't just about trade, it is about people. It is about building a nation where everyone, regardless of their social or economic standing, can confidently participate in the marketplace. In a broader sense, it's about the kind of country we want to be. A country where trust is the cornerstone of our marketplace, where businesses and consumers interact with mutual respect and understanding. A country that values and upholds the rights and dignity of every individual. Through this bill, we aim to empower consumers to make informed decisions, to assert their rights, and to seek redress when those rights are violated. This, in turn, will encourage businesses to uphold the highest standards of integrity, fostering a vibrant and fair economy. The Consumer Protection Bill is about building a Bahamas where consumers are informed, businesses are accountable, and the marketplace is a space of fairness and trust. It's about creating a culture of consumer rights and responsibilities where every transaction is an opportunity to demonstrate respect and fairness. Madam Speaker, this bill is more than just legislation. It is a testament to our commitment to the Bahamian people. It is about ensuring our nation's prosperity and our people's well-being. It is about creating an economy that values and protects its consumers, a resilient, inclusive, and fair economy. In tabling the Consumer Protection Bill 2023, we are making a strong statement about the future we envision for the Bahamas. As we discuss and debate this bill, let us keep at the forefront of our minds the people we serve, the Bahamian people. Let us remember that this bill is not just about rules and regulations. It is about their lives, their rights, and their future. Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Order that the document be brought up. Order the document to lie on the table. Further communication? The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Central and South Eleuthera.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is always a pleasure a privilege to stand in this honorable place and to represent the people of Central and South Eleuthera, Madam Speaker. But as we are all aware, this year has been an amazing year for sailing, as the sport has made a tremendous rebound on the heels of the pandemic. The response and enthusiasm from the sailors, the committees, the youth, the public at large has been amazing, and this year's National Regatta at Georgetown was one for the history books. I would also like to thank the opposition for their support as we partner to build and to develop the national sport. As minister responsible for Family Islands, which includes festivals and regattas, I have sailed in every regatta that I have attended since taking the chair. And it is my hope that as we promote sailing as our national sport, every Family Island minister would sponsor a sloop in the National Family Island Regatta and participate in the Ministers' Cup Challenge next year. I express my sincere gratitude to my colleagues, the member for Central and South Abaco, and a member for Freetown who gallantly answered the challenge and joined the sailors for this exciting event. Madam Speaker, we have prepared a floating trophy to name the winner in the category for every year. The trophy reads the National Family Island Regatta Parliamentary Cup Challenge floating trophy. Don't lose that one. I stand. It says the National Family Island Regatta Parliamentary Cup Challenge floating trophy, and on the side, 2023 Team Chester Cooper. All right, let me finish it. I got 200% one time. Let me Madam Speaker, I stand on principle and honor as a visiting minister to Axuma. So it's only respectful of me to ensure that in this first challenge, a host member and the Minister of Tourism and Aviation who supported the regatta would emerge victorious. But on a serious note, it is with great humility and pride that I present this award to commemorate this historic occasion to the member for Axuma and Ragged Island for his camaraderie, his stellar performance on board the Bull Reg, as they are officially the first winners of the first annual Ministers' Cup. The government has exemplified its commitment to the sport by naming sailing the national sport of the Bahamas in this Jubilee year. And we pledge a further commitment to educating our youth, advancing the boat building industry, and increasing the allocation to support sailing more holistically. I want to thank the sailors for their continued commitment. I want to thank my team at the ministry, my fellow colleagues, and Honorable Prime Minister for this bold initiative. Sailors, see you in Long Island. Now I'd like to present.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Come around. Want me to come around? So it's the floating trophy that you could present to me next year. And that's for me too. That's for you to keep. So this one reads, National Family Island Regatta Parliamentary Cup Race winner, Team Chester Cooper, Deputy Prime Minister. And on the top, make sure you can see my name every time. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, with your leave,
Yes.
I wish to say thanks to my crew. And I want to thank my fans. And I want to say thanks to the Almighty God. And I will defend my championship next year.
Congratulations, Honorable Member. Order the document. Order the document to line the table. Further communication? Thank you, Honorable Member. Communication for the clerk?
Madam Speaker, I thank you to report the degree of messages numbers 25-29 to the Honorable Senate.
Thank you. Messages from the Governor General? Messages from the Senate? Motion for leave of absence, leave to resign, seat in New Reds? Presentations of petitions. Presentation of reports of committees. Adoption of reports of committees. First reading of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumpkin, and Salvador.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a copy of a bill for an act to make provisions for the greater protection of consumers, the continuation of a Consumer Protection Commission, and for the functions and powers of that commission and related matters, and to repeal and replace the Consumer Protection Commission Act of 2007.
Thank you, honorable member. Why did the document be brought up? Is there a seconder? Second. Thank you, honorable member. We will move and second that the following bill be read for the first time. Consumer Protection Bill 2023. Order the document to line table. Further first readings?
Madam
The chair
Speaker,
recognizes the honorable member for West Bahama.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a copy of the following: a bill for an act to provide for the protection of and support for victims of violence, to establish the Protection Against Violence Commission, to enable the Bahamas to fulfill certain obligations arising under regional and international treaties, and for matters connected therewith.
Thank you, honorable member. Order the document be brought up. Is there a seconder? Thank you, honorable member. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a first time. Protection Against Violence Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Motion is carried. Order that the document do lie on the table. Order that the bill be read a first time and committed.
A bill for an act to provide for the protection of and support for victims of violence, to establish the Protection Against Violence Commission, to enable the Bahamas to fulfill certain obligations arising under regional and international treaties, and for matters connected therewith.
Thank you. For the first readings, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Centerville.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read first time copy of the following: a bill for an act to regulate mineral prospecting, mining, and related matters.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up. Thank you. Is there a seconder? Thank you, honorable member. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. Mining Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time.
A bill for an act to regulate mineral prospecting, mining, and related matters.
Thank you. For the first readings? Thank you, honorable member. Second reading, committee of bills?
Second reading.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Centerville. Good morning, honorable member.
Madam Speaker, I'm once again rise in this honorable house. Thank you. On behalf of the great people of the constituency of Centerville. And I'm again, Madam Speaker, grateful to the Lord above for his continued grace and mercy on myself, my family, our country, and all of its citizens. Madam Speaker, before I begin, I wish to at this time pay condolences to my colleague who's normally 2 seats down from me, the Honorable Member Mario Boleg, on the passing of his brother, the recent passing of his brother, Madam Speaker. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family at this time. Madam Speaker, in introducing the Exempted Limited Partnership Amendment Bill and the International Business Companies Amendment Bill, the government proposes to make changes to the existing legislation in order to modernize the various bills and bring them in line with best practices and industry needs. Madam Speaker, these proposed amendments to the governance of companies sit within a wider framework of our overall approach to legislation and regulation of the corporate sector. To understand our government's broad approach to this area, I thought it may be useful to clarify for honorable members a matter which has recently been made the subject of public discussion. Recently, a green paper on corporate income tax was released by the government for the purposes of public consultation. Honorable members will know that the use of green papers is an established tool within the Westminster system, which is used as a means of consultation. The member for Marco City and the leader of the opposition was quick to respond, castigating the government for something that has yet to happen. Let me just state for the record, Madam Speaker, as was said earlier by the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador, the government has not instituted corporate income tax. In releasing that green paper, this administration is continuing a conversation that the FNM initiated when they were last in office. Madam Speaker, in a statement attributed to the member for Marco City, he is reported to have said, and I quote, "The opposition cannot fathom how the government would find it appropriate to enter into any set of tax reform measures that will have a negative effect on every single key metric related to the economic performance, The Bahamian people cannot accept a proposal that does not support sustained economic growth and better employment opportunities," end quote. The member is also quoted as having said the country needs a green paper on fiscal reform, not just corporate income tax. How is the government going to adjust the tax system to reduce the burden on Bahamian working class families and add more equity in the system? Madam Speaker, end quote. Madam Speaker, the member should recall that the administration in which he served as a cabinet member itself engaged the country in conversation on corporate income tax. In December 2017, in what today seems to be a clairvoyant statement about the current FNM leader, the former Minister of Finance and former Deputy Leader of the FNM, Peter Turnquest, is quoted to have said, "When we start talking about taxation, people seem to get their knickers in a knot." It would seem that Mr. Turnquest indeed has some fortune-telling talent, because this is exactly what happened. Madam Speaker, The member for Marco City's response to the release of the corporate income tax green paper begs two questions. Firstly, has he been paying attention to what goes on in the country before becoming leader of a political party, even while he was in cabinet? Secondly, does the member think tax and fiscal reform are overnight or even instant endeavors? Instant endeavors are either overnight or instant endeavors. These are just questions I'm asking, Kalani. Madam Speaker, further evidence of the FNM's engagement on the subject of corporate income tax is shown in an article carried in the Tribune on November 3rd, 2017. While quoting former Minister Turnquist, the article states, "But it's reasonable to assume we are going to have to make some hard decisions in the future." Glad you remember that. Mr. Turnquist suggested the Bahamas could take a look at Cyprus as a model to follow, with that island nation having adopted a 10% flat rate corporate income tax.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Marco City.
Madam Speaker, I could reserve the comments until he is through, but I would like to respond to several things he said, one of which is the statement made no reference to corporate minimum tax. And your comment just now attributed that to me. And in fact, I did not comment on that. Yeah.
Thank you, honorable member. Honorable member, you may continue.
Madam Speaker, I think the record will reflect itself unless Kalani wishes to refresh his colleagues' memory. But in any event, yeah, Mr. Turnquist, according to the Tribune, according to the Tribune article dated the 13th of April, 2021, Mr. Turnquist is further quoted to have said on the subject, "It would be naive, thank you, to think we can continue as a zero tax nation." That is Mr. Turnquist quotes. Yeah. Just for context, Madam Speaker, these statements are being made by Mr. Turnquist while holding office as the Minister of Finance. Madam Speaker, not only did the former Minister of Finance speak favorably about the implementation of corporate income tax, but the former Minister of State for Finance and the current member for East Grand Bahama also shared his views on the subject. In the Tribune, the article of December 3rd, 2021, in which the member is said to have accused the Davis administration of burying its head in the sand to the Bahamas' detriment on global tax moves that threaten to impact the nation. The article goes on to state that East Grand Bahama said in this place, members would recall that during the June 2021 budget debates for the current fiscal year, both the then Prime Minister and myself advised the Bahamian people that the administration recognized, given the economic prospects of the country, that further tax reform was required. Remember? We stated then, as we believe now, that we needed to expand the tax base and to do so in a way that we ensure greater equity and fairness in the tax system. At some point, we will need to have a real conversation on tax reform. It cannot continue to be a political football, end quote. Madam Speaker, I fully agree with the member for East Grand Bahama. We cannot treat this important issue as a political football, and it would be wise, Madam Speaker, for his colleagues to follow the sage advice. He is a good man. I believe in him. Madam Speaker, the release of the green paper should invoke serious conversation and the offering of suggestions from those who wish and hope to gain the reins of power. Because should they actually gain the power that they zealously seek, these are conversations that they will have to have with the Bahamian people. When it comes to these types of necessary conversations, we have to move beyond misleading the citizens of this country simply for political mileage. The corporate tax green paper is available online for all Bahamian citizens, residents, and those who do business here to see and peruse for themselves. And so now, Madam Speaker, I wish to turn my attention to the bills at hand. The government, led by the Office of the Attorney General, has set a goal to improve the current laws pertaining to the registration of companies, insolvency, and bankruptcy in the Bahamas. These include the Companies Act 1992, the IBC Act 2000, the related legislation, and the Companies Winding Up Amendment Act, the International Business Companies Winding Up Amendment Act, the Companies Liquidation Rules 2012, 2013, and the Bankruptcy Act 1870. These legislative regimes have undergone many amendments over the years. The goal now is to ensure that these laws remain current, modern, competitive, and generally reflect international best practice. The Bahamas is home to many companies of all types and sizes, from sole proprietorships to publicly traded companies, from small mom and pop enterprises to multinational corporations. The Exempted Limited Partnership Amendment Bill 2022 affects exempted limited partnerships, or ELPs, governed by the ELP Act, Chapter 312. These types of companies resemble a limited liability company and have both general and limited partners involved in the business. A general partner, as per the Act in an ELP, shall, in the event that the assets of the exempted limited partnership are inadequate, be liable for all debts and obligations of the ELP. The limited partner, however, shall not be liable for the debts or obligations of the exempted limited partnership, save as provided in the partnership agreement and to the extent specified in the assigned sections of the Act. Madam Speaker, we are seeking the agreement of members in this place to repeal and replace Section 21A and 22 and add Sections 23 through 25. These sections cover the continuation of an exemption limited partnership as a limited partnership. Section 22(1) of the bill reads, "An exempted limited partnership may continue as a limited partnership registered under the laws of another jurisdiction in the manner provided under those laws, provided that the laws of that jurisdiction permit the continuation and the exempted limited partnership has complied with those laws." Section 23 of the bill covers the conversion of an exempted limited liability company to an investment condominium. The bill states an ELP registered under this act may be converted to an investment condominium established and registered under the Investment Condominium Act, number 38 of 2014, in the manner provided under Section 16 and prescribed in the provisions of the third schedule therein. Section 24 of the bill covers the conversion of an exempted limited liability company to an international business company. Section 24(1) states, an exempted limited partnership may be continued as an IBC in accordance with Section 84C of the International Business Companies Act, Chapter 309, with the approval of all the partners thereto. Section 24, subsections 2 through 5, outline the parameters within which an exempted limited company can seamlessly continue as an international business company in this jurisdiction. As per the IBC Amendment Bill 2022, the first significant companies reform in the Bahamas materialized with the enactment of the International Business Companies Act 1989 and the Companies Act 1992. The drafters of both of these pieces of legislation consulted widely, achieving consensus with industry stakeholders from money managers, public interest groups, lawyers, and accountants to trust companies and also banks. These pieces of legislation were introduced to make the Bahamas more attractive as a corporate domicile and to enable the Bahamas to compete regionally and internationally as a first-class financial services and private wealth management hub. At the time, IBCs were also popular in the British Virgin Islands, the Cayman Islands. So the IBC Act is being amended to reflect the proposed changes as regard the continuation of exempted liability companies into an international business company. Clause 2 of the bill inserts Section 84C into the Act, which reads, an exempted limited partnership incorporated under the ELP Act, Chapter 312, may be continued as a company by the registration of the Articles of Continuation as specified in subsection 2. The remainder of this section outlines instructions on the process of becoming an IBC. Madam Speaker, as we debate these amendments, it is important to note that efforts are also underway to overhaul the registered companies insolvency and bankruptcy legislation in the Bahamas. Due to the rapidly evolving domestic and international economic and financial services environments, there's a clear need to improve the current law pertaining to the registration of companies insolvency and bankruptcy. These legislative regimes have undergone many amendments over the years. However, the goal is now to ensure that these laws remain current, modern, competitive, and again, reflect internationally best practices. Currently, the project team that is working on reforming the company's regime, the insolvency and bankruptcy regime, and related legislation is holding consultations and have obtained benchmarking in the United States and worldwide, including the United Kingdom, on key issues of legislative and policy reform. Madam Speaker, local and international participants have been advocating for an urgent update to the incomplete insolvency regime and the antiquated and deficient bankruptcy laws. The Bankruptcy Act, along with its accompanying rules, were brought into effect in 1958 and have not been substantively updated since. Common critiques by the industry of the current regime are that it does not work adequately, aiding in the recovery of insolvent individuals and enterprises, and that it is weak in its protection of shareholders and creditors when insolvent companies are liquidated. Some have also argued that the bankruptcy regime needs more flexibility to effectively and proactively allow debtors to repay their creditors under court supervision. The reformation of the companies and insolvency legislation together can result in the Bahamas becoming a corporate restructuring hub with a more formidable, stable, and attractive financial services industry, which better protects investors and shareholders. If the Bahamas is to remain competitive as an international financial services center, these reforms are a crucial step in that direction. Madam Speaker, in my last contribution, I spoke about progress. More specifically, I spoke about true progress as being about bringing us all together and moving our communities and nation forward. I said then and I say again, we are here to serve, not to be served. Our responsibility as policymakers is to implement and pass laws for the greater good of the Bahamas and Bahamians. However, we must also seek to bring about change in our communities by drawing national attention to concerns and issues. While an important focus of this administration is the development of our family islands, and to be clear, we have seen evidence of this commitment in several development projects, there remains a serious concern relating to the consistent delivery of financial services, not only in Nassau, but also in some of our family islands. In the last few years, there has been a full pullout by commercial banks on a few islands that have left a significant void. While some of these commercial banks have tried to retain automated teller machines on some islands to provide services, there continues to be serious challenges with the consistency of ATM services. In short, the services being provided by some commercial banks in many of our family islands, including Nassau, is shamefully inadequate. On one island, on government payday, Madam Speaker, Bahamians go to the ATM very early in the morning and must toe a line because they are afraid that the ATM will not be operational later on in the day. On Long Island, I have heard of residents advising one another of the functionality or lack thereof of the ATM service. I've heard stories, Madam Speaker, of Bahamians booking airline tickets just to come to Nassau to withdraw funds off their bank account because their local ATM was down for days. Madam Speaker, I raised this issue of the constant delivery of financial services because for far too long, Bahamians have been suffering, and some commercial banks have not been sufficiently held to account for their lack of sufficient action and concern. It is egregious that some commercial banks have pushed for greater use of digital banking channels, such as ATMs. However, their services are not readily and consistently available. I will tell you what is consistently applied, though, Madam Speaker. The monthly service fee for your bank account, without fail. I publicly call on commercial banks, especially foreign-owned commercial banks, to treat our Bahamian people better, especially those in communities where there is no physical bank present. I also call on them to lower the costs associated with merchant transactions on islands where there is no bank, as an incentive to encourage greater use of electronic point-of-sales exchanges and to make it easier for businesses to conduct transactions and make a little profit. Madam Speaker, I hope that honorable members in this place will support these amendment bills as this administration continues to look toward the future by creating the legal framework necessary for ease of doing business in the country. Admittedly, this is not a fast process, but bit by bit, we are getting it done on behalf of the Bahamian people. The Bahamas has long been an attractive destination for tourism and for business. This success is due in part to the fact that we are willing to grow and change to keep pace with international practice. These bills, though short and seemingly mundane, will make life easier for those within our country whose livelihoods are affected by the acts we are amending. This administration, Madam Speaker, will continue to correct and amend legislation that will maintain the country's competitive edge in the global market and that will positively affect the lives of the Bahamian people. That is the job of any group that occupies this side of the aisle. And this Davis administration takes this job seriously. These, Madam Speaker, are the right bills for the right time, and I urge the House to support them. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Member, as we begin debate today, which one of the bills will be proceeding with? I know we'll be doing it as a compendium, but yes. We need a long title for either one that you want to.
The Exempted Limited Partnership Amendment Bill 2022.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Obliged, Madam Speaker.
Is there a seconder? The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Nassau Village.
I rise today as a proud member of this New Day government, but not on my own accord, but merely as a vessel for the people of the great constituency of Nassau Village, who have entrusted me with their development and well-being. Before I begin, I wish to also extend my condolences to my parliamentary colleague on the passing of his brother. And I would also like to extend condolences to the Bastian family, who would have lost their 24-year-old to gun violence a few days ago. But Madam Speaker, before I actually move forward and register my contribution, I humbly beg your leave to extend belated Mother's Day well wishes to my mother, Deborah Gay Strawn, and all the mothers and mother figures of the Nassau Village constituency and the wider Bahamas. Madam Speaker, on Mother's Day, my Stronger Village team and I distributed small tokens of my love and affection. I prayed that these small tokens provided some semblance of comfort, as mothers always provide comfort for their families. And I also brought just a gesture. So these are the actual Mother's Day slippers that I provided for my constituents on their Mother's Day, along with a few Mother's Day gifts as well. Yeah, Madam Speaker, as I ventured into Garland Avenue, I visited Miss Lockhart. Miss Lockhart is a beautiful 75-year-old lady who came out in the rain to meet me. And she said and congratulated me on the job that I was doing, but also to say thank you for coming just to show that much attention. And she also thanked me for the small token, but also wanted me to be encouraged and let me know that even if it was a napkin, the smallest gesture from me was that much more impactful. And I thank my senior citizens for their continued support, their prayers, and their well wishes. Madam Speaker, I further beg leave to inform this honorable House and the entire Bahamas of the great strides being made in my constituency. Madam Speaker, I grew up and currently live in a small community within my constituency called Red Line Acres. It's also the home to the world-famous Red Line Soldiers, Junkanoo Group B category. You see, Madam Speaker, I grew up in my small community, playing bat and ball, barefoot in the street, playing porking, making a rim out of old crates just to play basketball. Madam Speaker, these were the days. These were the activities that distracted and dissuaded my friends and I from joining gangs, that kept us occupied and out of mischief for 30 years. Madam Speaker, 30 years ago. But Madam Speaker, I found that the constituency's reality was very different under the former F&M representation. I was hurt and disappointed that the only progressive and groundbreaking change that was brought to the Nassau Village constituency were bright red hand pumps. Madam Speaker, 30 years ago, as a boy, I wished for some recreational facility so that I didn't have to play in the streets. I didn't have to utilize makeshift rims for recreation and enjoyment. Madam Speaker, 30 years later, as the Member of Parliament, I am happy to report that through collaboration of the community stakeholders, the community of Red Lion Acres will be outfitted with a state-of-the-art multi-sport facility that is currently under construction. Madam Speaker, this will undoubtedly enable the creation and development and refinement of sporting skills within my constituency, while providing a much-needed disruption to gang recruitment and other idle behavior that leads to deviance. Madam Speaker, I am confident that by harmonizing the efforts of church, state, and the private sector, we will be able to achieve true progress, lasting change for generations to come. The facility will feature a basketball component, a volleyball component, and a tennis component. Hopefully, I can make a plug with my colleague, the member for Garden Hills, to bring Summer Night League into the constituency just to bolster and generate some domestic income in my constituency. So I'll leave that plug right there for him. Madam Speaker, my constituents who reside further west off of Beatrice Avenue and Seabreeze Lane have expressed great disappointment in successive governments who they feel have neglected to listen and care about their street lighting issues, an issue that has existed for more than 15 years. You see, Madam Speaker, when the developers created the subdivisions, they inadvertently turned the houses in the wrong direction. So you had the power lines at the rear yards of the homes, which would mean that the power lines had to actually run over the roofs, which, without having to say, could possibly lead to fire and put us in a horrible situation. So the lights were never installed, Madam Speaker. Hundreds of my constituents fear coming home late at night and having to go through their dark corners to get to their homes. And they would have expressed these concerns to me. But Madam Speaker, 15 years later, in this honorable house, I wish to inform the residents of Bay Cedar, Thatch Plum Lane, Cocoa Plum Lane, and all of the impacted streets and corners off of Beatrice Avenue that your servant listens, your servant cares. Last Monday, my team and I conducted tests of 5 high-powered 19,600 lumen solar panel streetlights in the area of Bay Cedar Avenue. Madam Speaker, it was a resounding success. I've already started consultation and dialogue with private partners, and we'll be moving forward with our constituency illumination project that will resolve this year-old problem. You see, Madam Speaker, it goes without saying, at 35 years old, I'm not the richest. I was never the richest candidate or have access to more resources than any other member of Parliament. But innovation, Madam Speaker, innovation and a drive to succeed expectation is the key that I hold and that motivates me to be the best member of parliament that I can be. You see, Madam Speaker, the Greek general and politician Pericles stated that what you leave behind is not what is engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others. We have a duty to each and every one of our constituents to improve their standard of life. Madam Speaker, as Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I believe that it's vital to understand the multilateral and multinational framework that impacts us, our very domestic economy, and the overall financial development of our country. Currently, external factors and pressing international situations force us to take a closer look at antiquated policies with an attempt to streamline and make us more competitive. The legislation is also being crafted and restructured, all geared towards our overall development. Madam Speaker, I had the pleasure of attending the Association of Caribbean States ministerial meeting on behalf of the Minister of Foreign Affairs. The truth is that there are major geopolitical posturing happening in our region. And there's a concerted effort to resolve the disruption in the supply chain due to the war in Ukraine and also the instability in Haiti. Madam Speaker, due to these external factors, it forces a competent government to undergo extensive consultation, and dialogue is required so that there are no abrupt policy missteps. Madam Speaker, my colleague spoke about the background and the justification for the Green Paper. This is all in an attempt to garner as much insight, support, and knowledge so that we always ensure the progressive development of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. You see, Madam Speaker, international relations, but more specifically multilateralism, teaches us that dialogue and consultation enables the integration of diverse knowledge, experiences, and evidence into the decision-making process. Only by engaging with these experts and stakeholders from various fields, policymakers can access a wide range of perspectives and information, making more informed and evidence-based choices. Madam Speaker, only this approach will provide a credible and effective product and response. So now that we understand the need for appropriate stakeholder and expert consultation, I wish to move to the crux of the matter. Madam Speaker, the Bahamas Exempted Limited Partnership Bill before us, as so eloquently explained by my colleague, the Honorable Member for Seneville, simply seeks to provide the continuation of an exempted limited partnership as an international business company, and the continuation of an exempted limited partnership as a limited partnership in any other jurisdiction. It also provides for the transition of the exempted limited partnership's assets, liabilities, and pending legal proceedings to the international business company or the limited partnership in another jurisdiction, as the case may be. Madam Speaker, if you would permit me, I would like to explain the benefits in layman's terms, as sometimes our contributions tend to be overly technical and a few of the salient points may go missed. Our country is currently at an advantage with both of the acts in their current state, a disadvantage with both of the acts in their current state. Through consultation with multinational experts and bodies, which is consistent with good governance, it was concluded that the Bahamas was being impeded in terms of our ability to attract offshore partnerships. Hence, the bills placed before us, we seek to amend. So the bills in their current state are a bit restrictive. The bills will provide more flexibility with respect to management and operation of partnerships. They will clarify the legal impact of certain activities of limited partners, and provide further clarity in relation to deregistration of partnerships and conversions of exempted companies to partnerships. Madam Speaker, in short, these bills will allow the Bahamas to be competitive on the multilateral stage, competitive globally, attracting investor partnership attention on a multinational level. Madam Speaker, I won't belabor the point. I would just like to thank my dear constituents for their motivation and their belief in me. And in closing, on behalf of the great constituency of Nassau Village, I wish to second and support the bills before us.
Thank you, Honorable Member. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Exempted Limited Partnership Act. As many, the chair recognizes the Honorable Member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to make my contribution on behalf of the good and special people of the East Grand Bahama constituency. Before I get into the substantive contribution, Madam Speaker, I heard the member for Centerville speak about the banks. And I think this is the second time that I heard a cabinet minister speak about what's happening with the banks, particularly in the Family Islands. I believe it was the member for Foxhill that also spoke about when we debated the Central Bank Act, and he also spoke about his displeasure with respect to what's happening in the banks. And then I believe there was also a voice note that he had put out that spoke to what was happening. And let me first of all say that I agree that there must be and there ought to be change with respect to what is happening in the Family Islands with respect to the banks, that there is a lot of removing these infrastructures from the banks, and also dissatisfaction with Family Islanders in terms of how they conduct their affairs with respect to banks. I know that when I was the Minister of State for Finance, this was something that we were keen on addressing. We had a number of talks and meetings with banks with respect to the same process, and we were in the process of putting together a complete plan, which also involved the sand dollar from the central bank that would assist in resolving this issue. But what I didn't do, which the members seem to be doing, is in my view, they are speaking as though they are in opposition, as opposed to putting in place those policy measures that need to happen in order to make the necessary change. I believe that the member for Centerville and also the member for Foxhill ought to convince his cabinet colleagues with a plan, a strategy on how to address the situation. and as opposed to vocalizing it. Now, we can always speak about things in the House, and we can always speak about the way that we wish and want things to happen. But they are the cabinet. They are the executive. If anyone in the country can affect change, it is them. Now, we are willing to work with you. We on this side have said it before, that we are prepared to work with you in making those necessary changes. But it cannot be that the only thing that is happening is that you have two ministers who are prepared to speak publicly in dissatisfaction with the banking system. There is much more that has to occur, which is within their power to do. And we would like to see that what you have power to do, you do. Talk about it later. But what you have power to do, you make the decision and you do. And so, I leave those comments there. And it also takes me to a point where recently the Prime Minister made comments in the Cat Island Business Outlook, where he spoke about tax collectors and their means of collecting these taxes, as if he were not the minister responsible for the very same tax collectors. Again, it reminded me of someone who was in opposition, who is speaking about a government and is saying, this ought not happen, that ought not happen, this must change, that must change. Well, the power is within your hands. And instead of making public comments about what ought to have happened or what should not happen, because the very fact that you are making a comment about something within your ministry, what I would suggest means one of two things. Either you were the minister who gave them the directive or the policy to execute, or you do not or not is not aware they are going rogue, or you have relegated your powers to them, and they are doing something contrary to your policy directives. But if they're doing something that you don't like, then you give a policy directive to change it. You don't make a public statement and say, oh, I'm dissatisfied with the way the things are going. Well, if you're dissatisfied, then you do something about it. You make the necessary change about it. So, Madam Speaker, that is the position I think that ought to have been taken with respect to those points. But, Madam Speaker, I rise, as I said, to make my contribution. I believe that these pieces of legislation originated from industry and were industry-driven. We have communicated with the Bahamas Financial Services Board. We support these legislation. In fact, I'm advised that the industry provided the draft legislation, and that was the starting point to where we are today. So this originated from industry. I can also say that these pieces of legislation have been around for some time and have been started, and now the process was started under the previous Attorney General, and so we obviously have to support. One, it is industry-driven, and two, these originated under the previous Attorney General and the previous administration. The principal change seems to allow for the change of the legal entity from a limited partnership to an IBC with the preparation and the registration of certain documents. The amendments to the Exempted Limited Partnership Act also does similar things and allows companies to move from jurisdictions. However, keeping their status and also keeping their property. This, I am advised, also is allowed in other jurisdictions and will allow the Bahamas to be more competitive. I'm advised that currently the laws of Bermuda and Delaware permit this. And so we believe in keeping with those jurisdictions. They are our competition. And in keeping with those, if we pass this, it does make us more competitive. These pieces of legislation, according to industry, provide a more flexible or provide more flexibility with respect to the management and operations of partnerships and also of IBCs. Madam Speaker, so we support these pieces of legislation. Let me say that outright. But this debate also allows us an opportunity, as was taken by the member for Centerville and also the member for Nassau Village. It also provides us with an opportunity to speak about the recently released green paper on corporate income tax. They researched us quite well and quoted the former Minister of Finance and also quoted myself. So, Madam Speaker, in July of 2021, after consultation, the previous government agreed in principle to adopt the OECD G20 inclusive framework on base erosion and profit sharing, BEPS, two-pillar solution to addressing the global tax challenges, which calls for the implementation of a global minimum corporate income tax of at least 15%, and at that time it was to be implemented by 2023. I believe that may now have been extended to 2024. And let me make it clear that that is what we signed the Bahamas up for. As was made mention by the Prime Minister, we consulted before we did this, and it was widely accepted by industry that it does not make sense not to do it. The very point that the Prime Minister made, which was if we don't collect it, we lose it. That if we don't collect it, it is going to be collected in the multinational's home country. So it only makes sense that you put in place the infrastructure to collect this minimum corporate tax. But this only applies to those multinational companies that have a turnover of over 750 million euros. There are not very many companies or Bahamian companies that fit in this category. And that was another issue that allowed us to make that determination, was that if you put this in place for those multinational corporations, there are not very many Bahamian companies that this will affect. And so it is additional revenue that is going to be collected whether we do it or not. And it does not affect very many Bahamian companies. And it was something that after consultation that the industry said, yes, we cannot avoid doing this. The world is moving in this direction. And if we want to be at the top of our game in financial services and in industries, then we are going to have to sign up for this. But this takes us further, though, because it provided us with an opportunity to look at the entire tax system, to look at business license fees as opposed to corporate tax, and to see whether or not corporate income tax is a direction that we ought to be moving away from business license and moving in the direction of corporate income tax. So yes, we did put in place a study that was going to come back to us with information on what the effect of making this change would be. We said we were going to do a white paper, and we were going to look at whether or not this system is a system that we ought to change. So nothing that was said by the member for Marcos City, and nothing that was said by this member changes, and I believe nothing that is going to be said today changes those facts, that we signed up for it in December, and I wanted to make it clear as to what it was that we signed the country up for. And obviously, that Cat Island also, I believe, agreed to this, and they are moving forward with respect to those implementing those things. But I said some things back then that I wish to reiterate now. Madam Speaker, there were, that I said when I was the Minister of State for Finance. I said that we do not want to place Bahamian businesses in any worse position than they are in today. We want to make sure that if we move in the direction of corporate income tax, that we do not place Bahamian businesses in any worse position than they are in today. I also said that the focus then, as it should be now, is on economic growth. That should be one of the key factors, key considerations, key objectives that when we are moving forward to change the tax system, that we also must look at a tax system that is not necessarily going to spark economic growth, but a tax system that is not going to depress economic growth. I said the focus was on economic growth, that the whole position and the whole point of why we were not prepared at that time to increase taxes was because we are in a recovering economy, and we needed to do all we can to continue to spur economic growth. Further, we stated then, and we believe now, that we needed to also, and it was quoted, that we also needed to expand the tax base and to do so in a way that ensured greater equity and fairness in the tax system. I said that then, I believe that today. So we did envision a report that would lay out various tax reform options available to the Bahamas and trigger public consultation on this issue. We were the ones who started the process, as was said. So we envisioned a report that was going to come out, and we envisioned that we would then, that this report would spark public consultation. So, Madam Speaker, let me make this point clear. We welcome a forthright public discussion on the results of a corporate income tax. We welcome the opportunity, and all of us, I believe, welcome the opportunity to publicly discuss, to publicly look at how we implement or whether we implement this corporate income tax. However, there also are a few issues that we must also point out. First, the government has systematically eroded significant pieces of financial legislation that were left in place by the Free National Movement. You can't look at a new tax system without also taking into account that those pieces of legislation that we put in place were eroded. There were significant pieces of things that were in those pieces of legislation that the government decided, we can take this out, we can take that out, we can take the other thing out. No, not in these bills, no. Not in these bills. No. Also, Madam Speaker, this government has also watered down the fiscal strategy report. The significance of if you're going to change your tax system, you also have to look at the strength of the fiscal strategy report in terms of how you are, if you are going to change it, you also have to look at how you've watered down the significance of the fiscal strategy report in terms of your usage of these additional funds. The government also has not been forthright in answering questions raised by the public and the opposition on important financial matters. They have also taken away the independence of the Fiscal Responsibility Council. They've also breached the Central Bank Act. They've breached the Public Procurement Act. And they've also breached the Debt Management Act. So all of these things must be taken into account when we are looking at whether or not you are going to change the tax system and how you change the tax system and what changes are going to be made to the tax system. The government has also not been able to control spending. We have record-breaking revenue, but we have not seen a corresponding decline in our deficit. As a fundamental position, we cannot support the increase in taxation that does not come with a plan to reduce unnecessary spending. Now, let me be clear. This does not apply to Pillar 1 or the Option 1, which is what we signed on to, which is our international obligation, which we signed on to in July. That was signed in July. We stand by that. We believe that that is the right thing to do. But whether or not we implement corporate income tax in a domestic situation, all of these things must be taken into account. Secondly, the report is very concerning in that all four of the options, and this was stated in the report, seem to decrease growth, investment, and employment. All four of the options. Now, I spoke to a couple of people about this, and they said, well, taxation is not necessarily supposed to spur economic growth, that the reduction in taxes is what you do if you want to spur economic growth. So the report speaks to the government having more revenue, and only if the government invests this revenue in the right places will it be reduced by 1/3. That's what was said in the report. But I would suggest that isn't this the wrong way around? Don't we want more funds in the private sector? And let the private sector do the investment. Let the private sector hire the people. Let the private sector grow the economy as opposed to taking money out of the private sector and putting it in the hands of the government and then relying on the government to put it back into the private sector or put it back in for infrastructure. I would suggest that we're looking at it the wrong way. What we should be doing is also finding ways to have the private sector keep their funds. And also by keeping their funds, they can then invest those funds into the private sector. They can invest those funds into our economy. They can increase additional employment and then also grow the economy and also grow revenue. Madam Speaker, the Green Paper also I would submit is, while we are going to fully put in place our comments and we are going to fully participate in this process, it is something that we take very seriously as an opposition, and it is something that we are going to participate in. But the Green Paper, I believe, is a little incomplete. We need more information from the Green Paper. For example, the objectives of the Green Paper is one, it should be the system, the objectives of, sorry, not the Green Paper, but the objectives of the corporate income tax. One is supposed to be a system that is more competitive, that makes the Bahamas more competitive. Two, it complies with the OECD objectives. Also, three, that there is a need to raise revenue. And 4, it is a system that is simple. Well, I would submit that we need a 5th and 6th objective. That the 5th and 6th objectives ought to be that we also need a system, or even if the system does not do this, but we also must, that the government has a plan to economically grow the economy, and also increase the ease of doing business. So that has to be, when we are looking at taxation on one side, we also have to be looking at how do we grow the economy and how do we increase the ease of doing business on the other side. We cannot just look at it from a single point to say, okay, corporate income tax, this is the effect of corporate income tax, this is what the objectives are. But in looking at the corporate income tax, we have to, at the same time, look at, if we do this, how also do we increase the economic growth, and how also do we make it easier for people to do business in the Bahamas? So I would submit that you ought to also have a 5th and a 6th point to look at. These should be objectives that the government have in the forefront of their mind in moving our economy forward. Simply looking at the change in the system that introduces a corporate income tax or not is missing the larger picture. And if we just look at it from that sole point of view and we lose that larger picture, we can lose out. Does this involve a reduced corporate tax? Does this involve policies that reduce the cost of doing business? Does this involve accelerating digitization? Does this involve implementing corporate tax but putting in place reduction points for investment and employment? Those things I would submit ought to have been in the paper. That we're not just looking at putting in place corporate income tax, but if we put a corporate income tax, then these are the ways that if you do X, Y, Z, if you employ X amount of people, if you invest X amount of dollars, there's going to be a reduction in your corporate income tax.
Good point, yes.
You must also put those things in place. We also, Madam Speaker, we also see the development plans on raising, that they believe that this is going to raise revenue. Now, my question, Madam Speaker, is this. They have put in place a projection of...
These are suggestions, man. The chair recognizes the honorable member.
The member for East Grand Bahama seems to be embroiled in a debate on the green paper. The green paper is for dialogue and consultation throughout the country.
Which I'm doing.
You can make recommendations, but you're constantly referring to if we intend to. We haven't decided that. The green paper predicated upon the dialogue of the country. The subsequent white paper will determine where we proceed. But so put it in context, and everything that you suggest, you could write. The opposition could write as recommendations, which I do recommend, and please submit. But do not give the impression that some decision has been made for taxation. We want to make sure that it's not misunderstood, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member.
Let me move forward as my time is gone. The green paper also concedes that if you put in place the corporate income tax, it will increase the cost of doing business in the Bahamas. Therefore, I would submit that the green paper also ought to have put in place how you are going to counteract this increase in the cost of doing business if you do this. So we need, I believe also a discussion has to be done in terms of, and this ought to be led by the government. And then we would also be able to comment on those things as well. Also, the green paper seems to be a bit uncertain in terms of how this will affect the area of Freeport. Now, Freeport also is an area that is supposed to be a tax-free zone, and we already pay business license to the Grand Bahama Port Authority, and if we are paying business license to the Grand Bahama Port Authority, I cannot envision having to pay corporate income tax to the government and also paying business license to the Port Authority. So that is a point that deserves comment. I believe that corporate income tax ought not be in the Freeport area because we are already paying business license to the port area. Also, Madam Speaker, what is very concerning to me, which was raised over the last few days that I wanted to ask particularly ask the government about, is why is the government seeking to, or considering, let me put it that way, why is the government considering the imposition of a mandatory minimum holding of government securities for all insurance companies? Why is the government attempting to, or asking the insurance industry to give their comments, and the government is considering a mandatory minimum of government holdings? See, what I see this as is the government saying to all insurance companies, and this is the key word, mandatory, which I believe creates the issue. And Madam Speaker, if I could just get a few minutes just to finish this one point. But I believe the mandatory element is the concerning point. Normally, for banks, other financial institutions, the government lays out their securities, and you have the option of deciding whether you are going to invest in those securities or not. You have the free option to decide for yourself, decide for your company, whether or not you're going to do it. This seems to be suggesting something different. This seems to be suggesting that the government is considering putting in place a law which will force the insurance companies to purchase and to hold a minimum amount of government securities. I wonder why that is. And I need to ask the government to explain to the insurance companies, explain to the public, why is it that you are asking the insurance companies to do this? And I'm sure the insurance companies are going to respond to you. They've told us that they're going to respond to you in terms of why this is not a good idea. But for me, the question is, why is it that you are, it smacks of being desperate for funding. And so we need to understand why it is that the government is putting this forward and is asking for a response, which seems to be asking for a response right before the budget. And so is the government considering to do this during the budget period? Why is the government considering this? Why do you think that this is something that is a necessary point? But as we said, Madam Speaker, this is our position with respect to these pieces of legislation, and this is our position, I believe, the position with respect to the corporate income tax green paper. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I never anticipate going so early. It's never happened before. Madam Speaker, the government spoke a lot about the banking system in the Family Islands. And we recognize that there are challenges there. Many of the Family Islanders have been complaining. And the member for the East End spoke about it. Because no banking system within many of the islands, they find themselves having great difficulties sending their monies to New Providence or wherever the system may exist. And we had a plan in place. And I would ask the government to look at our plan that was in place. But we wanted to encourage, and we had discussion, to encourage especially Commonwealth Bank, which is Bahamian owned, and Bank of Bahamas, to place facilities in certain family islands, and the government would subsidize them to a particular point, covering their operating costs. We would have subsidized them to a point where their profit, there may not be any profit, but there will be no cost to them. And that discussion was ongoing, and I would ask government to continue with such discussion of subsidizing. And I chose those two banks because they are Bahamian banks, Commonwealth Bank and Bank of Bahamas. And I think government should. But Madam Speaker, I rise today grateful to God for giving me the strength to be here to represent the good people of the Kalani constituency. Their well-being, Madam Speaker, is one of my utmost concern. And given how astray this New Day administration is, we in opposition must be even more vigilant in protecting the interests of Bahamian people and of our constituents. Before us today are the International Business Companies Amendment Bill 2023 and the Exempted Limited Partnership Amendment Bill 2023. The Exempted Limited Partnership Bill seeks to amend the Principal Act to provide for A, the continuation of an exempted limited partnership as an international business company, and B, continuation of an exempted limited partnership as a limited partnership in another jurisdiction, and the transition of the exempted limited partnership's assets, liabilities, and pending legal proceedings to the international business company or limited partnership in another jurisdiction. The International Business Companies Amendment Bill seeks to, in part, insert a new section, 84C, into the Principal Act to provide for the procedure of converting an exempted limited partnership and incorporated under the Exempted Limited Partnership Act as an international business company under the Principal Act. I support these amendments in as much as they help our financial services sector, which is the second biggest industry in our economy. I am pro-business, Madam Speaker, and pro-investment. And many Bahamians had low expectations of this New Day administration when they were elected. What has surprised many Bahamians is how hostile they are to business. Madam Speaker, I have spoken in this place several times about how the New Day administration and the New Day tax collectors are causing so many difficulties for Bahamian business people. At the beginning of the year, the newspapers were filled with complaints from business people at how difficult it was to register their businesses and to get the relevant tax compliance documents. It is disgraceful, Madam Speaker, that this Prime Minister, who is the Minister of Finance, allowed such chaos to happen. He's rarely at his desk doing work as both Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. He is the fly-away and traveling Prime Minister who prefers jet-setting and luxury travel more than he cares about the needs of our people. Consequently, Madam Speaker, areas under the direct control of the Minister of Finance, under his direct control, performed poorly. Many hoped that all the issues with business registration and tax compliance documents were resolved after the business sectors complained to the media and embarrassed the New Day administration. We were wrong. It seems there is still disorder and difficulty when it comes to the ease of doing business under this failing Minister of Finance. SuperValu, Madam Speaker, is a leading food store chain and a major business in the Bahamas. Many people were shocked to read the comments of its president in the Tribune on Monday, May 22nd, 2023. Under the headline, quote, SuperValu President, things aren't flowing. The company's president set out the problems the business is having, trying to get basic things done with this administration. The story said, SuperValu's president says that while profit-based taxation would be favorable for food retailers, the government must first prioritize the ease of doing business because things aren't flowing like they should. Deborah Simonet, although welcoming the potential switch from the turnover-based business license fee to a corporate income tax, told Tribune Business the 13-store supermarket chain had recently experienced holdups and delays in getting produce to its stores because it had not received its tax compliance certificate, TCC, stating that there was nothing they should be holding up on the certificate for. She explained that its absence had been really annoying because a TCC must be presented to customs when clearing imported shipments of the dock. The inability to produce one had caused complications for several months, hampering goods clearance until SuperValu was finally issued with a temporary TCC. And Mrs. Simonet said, the supermarket chain has experienced similar issues with its business license renewal, while the necessary fee has been paid and issuance approved. She disclosed that SuperValu has yet to receive the actual license for wall display from the Department of Inland Revenue. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister should be embarrassed that areas under his control are performing so poorly. It is unacceptable, Madam Speaker, that companies who employ Bahamians and generate business are treated in this manner. And what concerns me even more is if SuperValu is being treated in this way, things must be much worse for the small businesses, because they do not have all the lawyers and accountants to help them navigate these matters. In fact, in many small businesses, the owner is also on the floor working to sell produce or services. He becomes an innate part of his establishment. If they have to go in over and over again to the new tax office, that takes away from their profit-making potential. And in instances, sometimes presents a state of staff shortages. The Bahamian business people did not think this is how they would be treated when the New Day Party was voted into power. They've gotten tax after tax after tax imposed on them by the PLP. It has become more difficult to do business. And taxes keep going up, Madam Speaker, keep going up and up and up. Instead of taking responsibility for how his ministry operates, the Prime Minister once again pandered and sought to shift responsibility.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Ramkins, and Salvador.
Not much is expected. But at the very least, and I know that the member is a stranger to the truth, but at the very least, if he's going to say tax and tax again, let's identify what those taxes are and when they were enforced. When were they put in?
Madam Speaker, in this House, we have repeatedly spoken. Listen. Let me just give you.
Repeating a lie doesn't make it true. I call upon the member to identify the tax, what item of tax it was. In fact, we reduced tax. Remember now, we reduced VAT from 12 to 10%.
He increased that.
Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, just to give two examples. Road traffic tax has gone up, bread basket item tax has gone up, medication tax has gone up, and that's just to name a few. Real property tax has gone up almost 400%. And there are many more I can name. During the budget debate, you will hear each and every one. Madam Speaker, instead of taking responsibility for how this ministry operates, the Prime Minister once again pandered and sought to shift responsibility just like he did when he got the deficit matter wrong. Madam Speaker, leaders take responsibility. Leaders take responsibility. I'm glad you agree. On 10 separate occasions, the Minister of Finance, the Prime Minister, had thrown the staff under the bus. He threw Christie under the bus in 2014. All data, all backup notes are here, Madam Speaker. The member for Fort Charlotte, the Minister of Works, was thrown under the bus in 2022 and referred to the Guardian article 22nd of November 2022. The staff was thrown under the bus. The writer with deficit, refer 2023. Financial Secretary and staff under the bus, BPL fiasco. He did not see the report. The DPM, the Deputy Prime Minister, was thrown under the bus. Check the Nassau Guardian, 22nd of the 5th, 2023, RCI and Toby Smith. He threw Halkitas, the Minister of Economic Affairs, under the bus. Check the gas station dealers fiasco, 26th of April, 2023, Tribune. The Deputy Prime Minister was again thrown under the bus. Under the bus, the 10th of, thrown under the bus, as reported in the Guardian, the 10th of May, 2023. Madam Speaker, I can go on and on. And he has thrown the member for Isliston under the bus, as referred in the Guardian, 22nd of the 5th, 2023. Madam Speaker, that is not how leaders behave. People look to respect their leaders who, when they see mistakes as a chance, mistakes are taken as a chance for growth and improvement opportunity, not as an opportunity to blame, shift, and throw others under the bus. Plus, Madam Speaker, mature leaders take responsibility, make a decisive action towards the issue, move forward with character. Madam Speaker, 10 times this leader has thrown his staff, his members, under the bus. And as we progress with the debate, I will demonstrate the chaos within the cabinet and the chaos within the OPM and the chaos within the Ministry of Finance. But Madam Speaker, if there are chaos in such entities, my God, what do you think would happen in the Bahamas? Pure chaos. Madam Speaker, the Tribune reported last Friday, quote, the Prime Minister yesterday slammed blinkered public officials for adopting inflexible approaches to the collection of outstanding taxes that close the business and hinder economic growth and productivity. Quote, Philip Davis Casey, addressing the Cat Island Business Outlook Conference, said civil servants too often adopted, quote, well, pay me for his attitude to the issuance of business licenses and signing of public works contract when the company involved owes tax liability to the public treasury. Rather than refuse to issue a business license, he argued that officials should instead discuss the outstanding arrears with the tax-paying business because talk will bring results. And if tax delinquent businesses were due to be awarded government contracts, Mr. Davis argued that the sum owed should merely be deducted from the value of the work to be undertaken. It is the Minister of Finance, Madam Speaker, who is blinkered. It is the Prime Minister who has a narrow and limited outlook. Brave Davis, the Prime Minister, is the tax collector in chief. I repeat, Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister, Philip Brave Davis, QC, is the tax collector in chief, though he is once again trying to throw the civil servants under the bus. I will quote all those, I will give you all the articles of those examples where you threw individuals, you started from Christie time. It's a chronic problem. Yes, I thought the senior spin doctor was about to rise, but you were just moving. Yes, Esan. Madam Speaker. Western. Madam Speaker, the tax collector in chief, he is their boss. He is their boss. The Prime Minister sets the policies for these agencies. He is responsible for their activities. If he all of a sudden has ideas about how to improve the granting of business licenses, tax compliance certificates, and other documents, he should issue instructions to get these things done. He must lead, Madam Speaker. That's what leaders do. But he, the tax collector in chief, is so busy leading the good life, indeed his best life, while most Bahamians are struggling under this tax regime and difficulty of getting their business done. Bahamians are upset, Madam Speaker, with the excessive actions of the new day tax collectors. The chief new day tax collector is the PM, Prime Minister. He is the Minister of Finance overseeing this tax crusade that is harming Bahamian businesses. And during the budget, I have 1 hour. I'm not confined to 30 minutes. So I want you to sit there. You will hear about the taxes. It is the Minister of Finance, Madam Speaker, to fix what is wrong. But it just seems that the tax collector in chief doesn't care. The only people who are finding it easier to easily get business are those in the PLP high command. Further, I once again ask about what is happening with the property on Cable Beach, where the gaming board had its office. That property should stay in the hands of Bahamian people and should not be given over to certain individuals. I will have more to say about this in time. On behalf of all Bahamian businesses, I am asking the Prime Minister, as the leader of the New Day tax collectors, for God's sake, have mercy. Have mercy. Owed taxes should be paid. We accept that. Owed taxes should be paid. But there should be fairness and due process. Tax collector in chief, more and more people are complaining that doing business in the Bahamas is becoming more difficult under this tax collector in chief. He is only focused on his self-appointed role as chief tax collector. We need him to have a heart toward Bahamian businesses and Bahamian business people. For God's sake, we cannot take any more taxes. There were some people whose real property tax was $800. Suddenly, went up to over $4,000. For God's sake, man. People are hurting. People are hurting. Madam Speaker, our people are frustrated. Oh, the tax collector finally rise.
The chair recognizes the honorable for get out of the room, Kingston Salvador.
At least I'm not the competent authority. And I know the Bahamian people don't miss it. Not at all. Madam Speaker, he speaks about real property tax being raised.
Yes,
if the truth be told, right, it was the exercise started by them, where they had properties revalued.
Yes.
So if your property was on the books valued at $100, and they revalue it to be $200, the tax don't go up, but your payment might go up because of the revaluation and the reassessment, which they did.
Thank you, honorable member.
The tax collector in chief is correct that we started the process so that we could evaluate homes, etc. It was the plan that once we got the report was supposed to be discussed with the people and with the necessary individuals involved, the real estate agents. You did not do any of that. Then we would have decided what is. We were then to decide what is palatable to the Bahamian populace. But the tax collector in chief had no consultation. They just complete the report and bam, went straight ahead with taxing it. But a tax collector does, read the Bible. We know about tax collectors. I won't refer to them, but we know about tax collectors. No, I wouldn't. What you say? Zacchaeus? You said Zacchaeus? Oh, I didn't. Oh, yeah. Who's Zacchaeus? I didn't say it, Okay, let me finish. Madam Speaker, our people are frustrated. They need relief. They need the Prime Minister to do his job instead of flying all over creation, spending the tax dollars he is collecting. Madam Speaker, I would only say that it's good that the corporate tax report is being sent out for consultation, but I would ask the government to look very closely at the sector. Once an individual is paying business license, consider allowing them to pay business license not on gross, but on net. Madam Speaker, the challenges is this. Individuals can lose money, but have a high gross and still paying as opposed to pay on net. But once they're paying on net, you must be careful so that you have the systems in place so that there cannot be any cost shifting. The business sectors would understand that, and if necessary, I can explain that at another time. The country needs an accounting of the recent extravaganza while the PLP High Command was in London. We want a report of the trip in London. How much who was there is not my business. That's not my business. We want a report. How much did the trip cost? Was it $250,000, $500,000, or over $1 million while you were enjoying yourself? Many people could not afford to buy food. Their water was being turned off. Their lights were being turned off. They were having great challenges while you were enjoying it. Now, Madam Speaker, they're introducing independent jacket. Who's paying for that? Government paying for that too? You want to pay for jacket for all of us, including yourself, while people can't even buy bread? No, man. What else you paid for while in London? Madam Speaker, oh, what a glory day during the debate. 1 hour is a lot. How many people were there in the delegation? And how many people and whom did the government pay for? As for the jacket that you want to give us, I'll pay for my jacket. You know, those jackets may cost up to $1,000. Do you know how much that represents? I know Angliston is a nationalist. Angliston would prefer that money to go to help the people, not to give me a jacket. Not to give you a jacket. That's the people's money. You're taking the people's money to buy yourself a jacket? For God's sake, man. Help the people. Madam Speaker, the PLP has the PLP fully reimbursed the Treasury for their private trip to Bermuda for a political event? Madam Speaker, we debate the International Business Companies Amendment Bill 2023 and the Exempted Limited Partnership Bill 2023 with the hope of making the Bahamas a better place in which to do business. That is what we as legislators are doing. However, in order for there to be a greater ease in doing business, we need an executive that is able to execute the objective. Instead, we have an executive led by a prime minister who's causing more problems. And this prime minister won't even accept responsibility for his failures. Madam Speaker, many hope that the prime minister and minister of finance will show greater diligence, understanding, and care in the upcoming budget. I hope the prime minister will take time to familiarize himself with his government's budget and know basic things like the size of the deficit this time. More importantly, the country is waiting to see if his words about business license and other matters at inland revenue are more than just pandering and making excuses for his failures. Madam Speaker, during my last 3 minutes, I want to point out, I got 3 minutes. Kalani just recently had, last week, Saturday, a very successful women brunch. More than 70 women turned out. The speaker was Sabrina Pinder, and I thought she did an excellent job. And Madam Speaker, during my 3-minute speaking to the women of Kalani, I reminded them that women are the leaders in this country. They are the leaders in the world.
and they must take their rightful place. Who can undergo the pain of labor for 6, 8, 10 hours? And at the end of it, a beautiful, beautiful infant comes forth. That takes strength, Madam Speaker. That takes strength. The average male, one headache, and he's laid up for 3, 4 days. Madam Speaker, in the next 2 minutes, I'm talking about you all. Madam Speaker, I pointed out to them that they must take their rightful place in this society. After all, it is they, the women, who bring up our children, who ensure that our children are taken care of, proper environment, safety, etc. And 67% of the births in this country are a single parent, including myself. And the mothers are bringing up the children. The children are the future of the country. The young people are the future. Madam Speaker, what that means is our women are holding the future in their hand. Garnish it. Take charge. Take responsibility. Let us see 50% of females within Parliament. Let us see the women taking their right. Yes, you heard me. Let me see. Let us see. Madam Speaker, I've said before, leaders learn from mistake. And they take advantage of the opportunities. They take advantage of the opportunities. But Madam Speaker, but the bad thing is when a child goes viral, the mother's blamed. But when the child succeeds, the father gets all the praise. It's wrong. I urge you women, take charge. It's there for you. And Madam Speaker, I also had encouraged them to intermingle, know each other, share telephone numbers, and have such events on a monthly basis. The women must remove and take charge. We cannot have the tax collecting chief in charge anymore. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
The member for Kalani in his final 2 minutes rather confused me. Firstly, by talking about the power of women, when in fact he only had one member in his cabinet. And then secondly, when he said when children go viral, I'm not sure what he means. I think he means rogue or doesn't mean rival. It's the same thing? Okay. Okay. And yeah, that's how we spend no. Madam Speaker, the competent authority has exhausted all the time before the lunch break, so we now take our lunch break and return at 3 o'clock this afternoon. I ask for suspension.
Is there a seconder? Second. Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that the business of this House be suspended until the 3 p.m. hour. All, as many are in favor, will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The motion is agreed. The business of this House stands suspended until 3 p.m. All right.